Hello, everybody, and welcome on to today's Daring Living podcast. I have on the show with me a very special guest. Her name is Isabel Bagsik, and she is a soulful brand designer. I feel like the moment when, um, so how we kind of got connected, a backstory of how we got connected was I posted on Threads, which I'm actually really loving. Threads on there is amazing. The community there is amazing. And I posted a post of, is anyone interested in becoming a guest on my show? And Isabel reached out, and the moment I saw her title, a soulful brand designer, I'm just like, okay, I have to get her on. This is like something I also have a lot of questions about, and I think she has a lot of wisdom that she can share with us today. So welcome on the show, Isabel.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that the internet could connect us in this way. Yeah, I love threads too. At least I hope it doesn't change because the vibes are great, the community is amazing, and it's such a wonderful way to meet folks who are doing really cool things such as yourself. So I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with you.
Yes, and so I'm also curious because uh you are a Filipino American
Mhm.
and you're also working in the creative field. So I'm just wondering, maybe you can share with the audience about your backstory and kind of the experience that got you into this creative field, as well as, being a Filipino American with immigrant parents that you're also working with and growing up in that type of culture and experience. Is there any challenges that you had to really overcome to as you were working through this journey?
Oh, yeah. As a creative with Filipino immigrant parents, definitely. So I really appreciate this question. And for some context, I am the first in my family to go to university in America. My dad is a software engineer. He has that background. And my mom, for the most part, she did have a college education, but pretty much since having me, the first child as well, it was a stay-at-home mom until I went to college. So it was a lot of firsts that I was doing as the first child, as the first in both sides of my family to go to university in America outside of the Philippines. It was a lot to navigate and have that pressure of figuring out that experience. I didn't have any older cousins or anyone who I could ask for advice around navigating that system. And so it was difficult to be the first to make those risky decisions, but unknowingly, I was really having a strong connection to my intuition, despite the fears and no one modeling this nonlinear, unconventional path that this was okay. And so also, to their credit, my dad was really supportive in terms of um, finding it really interesting options for me, knowing that I wanted something creative. He found a kind of like a discipline within design called industrial design with his fascination with technology. That was really cool to learn about as I was researching what to apply for in college. But there was that compromise of also double majoring in computer science. So when it came time to applying for colleges, even though I was in all these advanced courses in biology and chemistry and science and history and whatnot, I could not see myself doing that for the rest of my life. That was the question. What could I do for the rest of my life? And all of that just was not it for me. I'm like, I can't do that. The only thing that I could think of was something creative. And I ended my year in high school with an advanced art studio class. And I'm so grateful for my teacher who still continues to support me when I post on LinkedIn. She is so sweet. So I really loved that opening up the possibility of doing something creative. And so come to college, my first year. I experienced my first, I believe, panic attack in the middle of my first year in a review session preparing for an exam for a computer science class. And I knew I had to voice this to my parents. And it was so scary. I cried as a first child of immigrants. I did not cry and repressed those emotions and played the brave, not emotional daughter. Um and so they knew that was like, oh, that's a big red flag. And I'm so grateful that my dad said, I want you to be happy. As long as you work hard, I want you to be happy. And that stayed with me for years, especially during that time studying. And so I did not take for granted my design major, which I studied. And I also studied technocultural studies, or what is known now in that university, cinema and digital media, I believe. And so that really kickstarted my serious focus into the design world, into paving this pathway of a career that was creative, despite my parents and even they're kind of like my aunties, but not blood related. We call titas. And so even hearing from them saying, kind of encouraging me to not follow my intuition, to encourage me to choose quote unquote safe path or a safe career choice. But I just couldn't. It felt sickening. I felt so like if I considered anything else, it was really affecting me physically. And I'm so glad that despite all of this noise outside of me, that was telling me to shape myself in one way, something inside was too strong that I now know is my intuition, was telling me that no, like listen to this feeling and follow it and be so steadfast in that choice. You are making a choice. And when you do make that choice, be so full of conviction and go all in, full on 100%. And every time that I did listen to that, at every decision that felt risky or just was illogical, didn't make sense, it always turned out to be so incredible. Just the most incredible experience or opportunities opening up my way. And so, as each of those kind of breadcrumbs are moving through these different thresholds or portals, it continued to be motivation, affirmation to keep listening to that.
I find it so interesting how, um, isn't it so interesting how our bodies tell us so much? Like you were saying how when you felt like you had the panic attack and when you just felt like the sickening in your body, it's really just your almost like your body's way showing you that, hey, Isabel, you're going down the wrong path. Like this isn't what you really wanted to do for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and it's kind of like your body knows, right? But I think there's also like this um not stigma, but just like this idea that and like something that you're feeling, it means that you're doing something wrong, when in
Hmm.
fact it's it's like the sickening feeling is showing you the way of what's right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's really scary when you don't see anyone else kind of affirming or saying like it is possible. And it's this trust, this deep trust, kind of like you're a trust fall. You're falling and you know that you're going to be held and safe, but you can't see the bottom and you don't know what's there, but you have a safe landing. And so it takes a lot to develop that trust and a lot of practice. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of I agree. The body knows and can be a great signal. And I have other stories around, the hard lessons of listening to the body and caring for the body and letting and when it shows like, hey, choose something else because it's not working. But yeah. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm curious, um what do you love the most about branding? Like, what is it about design and branding that really lights you up?
Yeah. So ever since I was young, I just loved, let's say, print materials like magazines or books or flyers, things that I can get my hands on. I still collect and hoard different uh, physical mementos when I travel, like receipts or brochures in museums. And there's just something about the way things are put together that really draws in the eye, that makes you feel something that, let's say, if it's in a book or infographic, it can convey a story or a message so immediately in the way things are organized and brought to life with color or with typography or its layout, thinking about branding and design. And I think in the branding sense, it can be such a powerful amplifier of your mission or your business or your passion project in a way that can connect with other people, in a way that excites them, that can instill some emotion or encourage introspection. Um, and so that's what I feel really excited about in that playful, creative sense of branding, and not so much just like the conventional branding for just profit and strategy and whatnot. Yes, that can be there in the undercurrent, but the part of it that excites me is the sense of that connection, in the excitement, in the intrigue, in the seduction, in the pro like provoking or yeah, just like making something beautiful with intention. So
Mm.
there's more to that, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, and even just when I'm talking to you right now, I can just feel like you're a very soulful person and you really care about people and you really care about the work that you do. And so I'm curious because um, you are like everything that you do is you do it with soul, right? So what does it really mean to differentiate between a soulfully designed brand versus an aesthetically pleasing brand? Because I feel like everyone wants to make their brand look pretty,
Mhm.
and everyone, even I don't know that much about design, but I can still put something together that looks great. So like in your definition, what do you think is the difference, and how do you allow yourself to really connect with the brand and to create a brand from that perspective?
Yeah, great question. Something that I often hear and has become a running joke with other designers is the misconception that, oh, just make it pretty or just need a logo. And it's not just that. And the thing with only focusing on aesthetics is that if it's not connected with or relevant to who you are, the work that you're doing, or the community that you're serving, or the problem you're solving, what have you, there's going to be an obvious disconnect from you and your work. Kind of like how people put on a facade and you can feel they're superficial. That's going to be felt even through the screen. But on the flip side, when it is aligned, that really resonates, even virtually, even if you are not live. Like I've heard time and time again, I'm so grateful. Um, but I've heard time and time again that when people have come across my website, they can feel immediately um, that it felt really calming and very soulful, like you said, or soothing, or just like sensual, like all these really lovely words that I really appreciate folks were reflecting back to me. And that was the power of really resonant branding. And they said that it matched when they attended workshops with me or worked with me or came across Instagram content or reels that it matched with, and it all felt cohesive. And that's a big part of it. Does it feel like an extension of you? Or if it's not your face on your brand, for example, is an extension, a true extension of the story you're telling or the work you're here to share with the world? And so, with that, with, let's say, Canva, which is a really great tool to democratize design. Um, there are a lot of great templates, but I see the templates as more as a foundation or starting point. Oftentimes, folks who are, you know, not familiar with the world of design, totally valid and totally real. You are learning or you're figuring it out. That oftentimes that's it. You take a template and you just fill it out with your information, slap on your photo and whatnot, and call it a day. And oftentimes that's all the capacity you have. But when you're ready to take it to that next level and really dive deeper into refining your branding to match you and your work or your story, then it's getting more intentional with how you're representing yourself, kind of like this digital persona or this brand archetype. Like, how can you or your brand be embodied in the digital world? And that can have a lot of play. It can be really powerful. It can create this sense of deeper connection or knowing when someone can see like a branded piece of yours, whether it's on Instagram or your website or flyer or whatever. It's like, oh, that's immediately like I know who that is, or I'm ready and ready to connect or ready to listen because I know what they're about. And it can be super simple too. It's not just the brand colors you have or the photo or the logos. And that's a whole other conversation that I'm open to going into. But branding in that sense, I see it as when it's done that resonates with people is this extension of your authentic self. And with that, that's going to branch off into something else in terms of a lot of folks that I've connected with, I've had this common theme show up around the fear of visibility.
Mm.
And that creates this feeling that they aren't ready to bring their full selves into their work or into the business or in branding and marketing themselves. And so that can hinder how they brand themselves. So that's that next level or next layer that I really like to get into with some practices that I guide folks through so that they can get to the actual branding that does feel true and good to them.
Do you have a practice that you can share with people?
Yeah, I'd love to. So
Yes.
for those who are listening, if you're driving, please save this for later. Or if you're on a walk. But if you are listening, and you're in a space with some materials or something to write with, then I highly recommend uh, diving into this practice and letting me know how it goes. So one of the practices that I really encourage folks to try out is a non-dominant handwriting technique. And so I've shared this very often just because it's so simple to try, and also you receive such profound messages so quickly. And it's been amazing to see and hear from folks what comes through. And so what this is, all you need, the supplies you need, is a physical piece of paper and something to write with. So it can be a pen, a marker, a pencil, and that's it. And then maybe a timer. So this can be like 5 minutes and see what comes through there. And so with this, you would write out the prompt or the question with the hand that you use daily. So for me, I'm right-handed. I would write the prompt with my right hand. And then I would respond by switching the pen to my non-dominant hand. So for me, that would be my left because I do not write regularly with that. And you'd keep writing and responding to that question until your timer's up or until you feel ready. Even if you're repeating yourself, even if it doesn't make sense, or maybe you're even illustrating something, whatever comes through, let it come through. And that is your inner child, that is your intuitive part of you, your inner wisdom. And this draws from an art therapy practice. And really connects with this nonlinear and non-logical side of you and reminding us that if we have the problem or the question, our bodies and our minds also have the solution. And it's reminding us of this sovereignty, this agency that we have this wisdom already. And yes, having support and mentors and resources are helpful. But if you're inundated and overwhelmed and only doing that, then you can get lost with, okay, what is truly wanting to come through from you? And that can be so powerful of what your perspective or your thoughts are around your question. And so those who are listening, now that I've set that up, the prompt that you can try out using your regular writing hand would be, what does the true essence of my brand need from me? And you can tweak this, but we can start off with that question. So, what does the essence of my brand need from me? And then you can respond with your other hand. Do that for 5 minutes. You can pause this podcast, then come back so that you're, in the practice, in the mood for it. And try this out for the next 7 days. Just 5 minutes. That's what, like maybe three long TikToks if you're comparing it to something. So yeah, try that out. 5 minutes for the next 7 days. Put it on your calendar, put an alarm, hold yourself to this promise to try out and see how that feels by the end of the week and what insights continue to come through. So that's a practice that I'm excited to share with you all, something that I often invite folks into and kind of change up the prompts depending on the client that I'm working with or the project that we're doing or the theme we're focused on. So, yeah, hopefully that is supportive for you. And if you try it, please let me know, connect with me. Yeah.
Yes, I love it. I'm going to try that.
Yes.
So I probably can't write with my left hand. Uh, does typing also
Perfect.
count, or does it have to be
So it's
writing?
more powerful when you are using your
Mm,
hands
yeah.
with physical piece of paper. And that's something that does come up with folks, that there's this hesitation or perfectionism comes up like, oh, I don't write with that hand. It's
Yeah, I
gonna
don't
be
even know if
slow,
I
it's gonna
can
be
write.
messy.
Yeah, I don't even know if I can
Right.
write alphabets with my left hand.
Perfect. That's exactly typical and normal. And so you can go slow, there's no rush. And when you look at the end result, it will often, almost always, look like a child wrote it.
Mm,
And so it's this, then you can look at it and really have this um, physical reminder that your inner child is within you. And sometimes I've gotten emotions out of people and people cry or something comes up for them. So whatever does come up for you, please take care of yourself. Drink some water, find a moment to feel into and move through those emotions, or reach out to your support system. Anything, any practices that help support you. Um, but yeah, anything can come up, or maybe nothing, and maybe it needs time to integrate and process through you after that. But yes, highly recommend. I don't know how people have done this digitally. But yes, highly recommend doing this physically to get the full effect.
And drawing also works. I can draw with my
Yeah,
left
I've
hand.
done a prompt where they do an illustration based on something that we're working on or a project that we're doing. Some people have done a mix. So whatever your inner child wants from you.
Yeah. Okay, I love it. I'm going to try this on my own.
Yes, please let me know how it goes.
Okay, yes. And yeah, I need to add more essence into my branding. So earlier you mentioned about how your brand, when you really create a brand that aligns, it's kind of like an extension of who you are. So heard there's kind of like I've heard like mixed messages of how to create a brand. Some people say that it's an extension of who you are, but maybe like take, like take a almost like your brand as a separate identity from you, but it's or it's like an amplified version of a part of you. Whereas some people also say it's your full self. Right? So what are your thoughts on that and on how to really create a brand that way? And I'm asking this because it kind of ties with another question I also had was a lot of the people in my audience, they're multi-passionate and they're kind of multi-dimensional beings. And so who they are is kind of like full of contradictions. They can be very loud and quiet. It can be, fierce and strong and soft at the same time. So it's kind of like they see themselves as multi-dimensional and very like very big and there's a lot to encompass. And so sometimes people can get confused about how to really brand themselves. They feel like it has to be uh, it has to be separate from them or like just a part and then they emphasize it. But then if it's just one part, they also feel like it's not fully in alignment with who they really are, which is so much bigger than that. So yeah, that's a lot of questions, but whatever comes through for you and however you want to talk about this.
Yeah, so I am right there with them, multidimensional, um, all of these things. And it's interesting to note how this very similar theme or conversation has been popping up lately. So it's like, okay, there's something in the collective that is, considering this or really challenged by this. And I actually recently wrote about this, focused on niching yourself
Hmm.
versus liberating your multidimensionality. And that's something that I really want to name is that so often for generations, especially for folks who have marginalized identities, um, are have often been told to shrink, to play small, to fit into certain boxes, and I'm done with that. And I hope you are too, because it is tiring and it really represses your voice and who you really are and the things that you feel truly excited and lit up by to share with the world. And why shapeshift into something that isn't, doesn't feel good? Something that I'm trying to remember is connecting with my pleasure and joy, and that is a radical act in a society that wants us to be hopeless and tired and not think about a new paradigm or a new way of being with each other. And so when I think about niching ourselves down versus embracing your multidimensionality, you know, I see the traditional sense of the concept of niching as restrictive and rooted in toxic capitalism, this the scarcity mentality restricting us from our true selves versus freeing all of these parts of you that want to come through. And with branding, it doesn't have to be cemented forever. There's like this nuance around that where yes, we can have an aligned brand, but it doesn't mean that we are not allowed to, as human beings, to evolve and change. And with that, our branding will inevitably evolve and change with us. And there's that difference between a brand that has a shaky foundation where you're changing your fonts every week and it doesn't look cohesive in all areas that you exist online versus a brand that just naturally evolves with you over time, that has a
Mm,
strong foundation with this conviction of who you are and embracing all of these parts of yourselves. And it's thinking about how, you know, your multidimensionality, what wants to come to the surface and wants to be seen. And of course, I also think about digital safety, cyber safety, cyber security. So we're not sharing every single detail about ourselves and we're not trauma dumping here. That's definitely something I want to make sure folks are keeping in mind too. But how can we share and have our brands as an extension of ourselves from a place that feels, grounded and resourced, and rested? Um, And so these are things that I wanted to share in terms of that question. Uh, and something that I'm really excited to be talking about. It seems to be something that has been popping up in different spaces and groups and folks I'm interacting with. And so, as someone who has played small for years, as someone who hid my voice for too long, I'm in this season of really pushing through that surface and really excited to reach these edges that want to play and
Mm.
be seen and be heard in a way that feels so pleasurable. And it does take that courage to have to be visible um, on a regular basis.
I love it. And it's kind of like uh almost like really allowing your brand. And I love how you mentioned about that brand has to tr almost like trusting that your brand will evolve and not being afraid to evolve
Hmm.
and playing on the edges
Hmm.
a little bit. This also makes me think about like the idea of visibility and how to allow your brand to be on the edge a little bit to allow your brand to be more visible. What are your thoughts
Hmm.
on that? Of like how to let your brand become more visible?
Yeah. So around one of your earlier questions too, I think of how folks who may still be, hesitant or scared about being visible, you can see your branding as kind of like an archetype or something that you can slip into and be this persona, this alter ego. If you think about, let's say, Beyonce has Sasha Fierce, that's the first one that comes to mind, but there are others, I'm sure, in pop culture or maybe in your personal experience where, like, let's say superheroes, they have their alter egos too, where you can kind of hide behind if you want, if that makes you feel more comfortable to show up in your work in the public sphere, in social media, wherever you may be showing up. And so maybe that could be a way you could look at it as developing this persona or this archetype that you can slip into and play with, experiment with. For me, I love fashion, I love style. And so dressing up and playing with makeup, that could be something that you can try out. Like, what would the most, embodied, confident version of the founder of my business be like? How would they hold their posture? How would they move in a room? What would they be wearing? How's their hair like? Um, really playing with that. Maybe that could be a fun experimentation and embodiment practice to actually try out for a day, for a week, for a month, and playing with what that feels like. Kind of, I think of it too like dressing up for the job you want. So you're dressing up for an interview, and there are different kinds of outfits that would be appropriate for one job and not so much for another, for example. And so are you showing up, embodying, dressing up, moving appropriately to the way that you envision your work to be, your business to be, wherever you may be, whether you own a business, you're a team member, whatnot. And so I think that could be a playful way to think about it, and have that be a embodied practice to inform and inspire your branding?
Something that I teach people is also to really help you step into your self-identity and to create like a self-concept and an identity for you to really step into so you can feel into and think about,
Yeah.
yeah, and think about what would this person do in your situation and how would they, act or think or feel. And I love how you're also connecting it to branding
Hmm.
and really creating like this extended persona of this person in this brand that you can practice stepping into every time that you market, right? And every time you are online and showing your branding. I think that's a great way to step into your self-concept.
Yes, I love that. Yes, definitely this practice, maybe like a version of practicing or connecting with the self-concept. And it can be really just, can you have fun and play with that and let it be experimental, kind of like Halloween, if you practice that, or dressing up for a costume party. And let that be kind of your um, maybe good luck charm or armor or whatever words to help you create this sense of confidence to speak on camera or to market yourself or share your work because the community wants to see you. They can't find you. They can't work with you if they can't find you.
Hmm. Yes. And so something else that I know is very important to my people as well is really how do you connect with your roots and
Mm.
how do you really bring out your culture? And so I'm curious, what are your thoughts on adding this element of helping you connect with your roots and connecting back to that ancest I can't say that word
Ancestral? Yeah. Yes.
ancestral
Yeah.
ancestral.
Lineage. Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Hmm.
yes, exactly. Connecting to your connecting to your
Let's find other words.
lineage. Yeah, how do you add that into our branding?
Yeah. So if, that resonates with you to bring in that part of your story, your identity, that could be a really beautiful way to personalize your branding. And so I often have brought in my Filipino culture into a lot of my passion projects and is kind of like an undertone of my own branding as well. And so with that, it's getting curious and reflecting on what is unique to your family, to your lineage, to your ancestors. And with that caveat is, you know, making sure that you're not romanticizing or fetishizing groups that you are not a lineage of. You know, that can be seen within cultures. There might be other groups that are romanticized, but you're not part of it. And for those who aren't able to trace their lineage, that is totally okay too. What are then your unique family traditions or something specific to you, maybe that you grew up with, whether it's types of foods or places you've traveled to that really mean something to you or your family or your loved ones. Maybe locations you usually frequent. Is there a spiritual practice that you've been raised with that resonates with you? And getting curious about all these different aspects that um, resonate, that were important, that were a big theme in your life that you feel are still connected to your work today or that you feel really inspired to bring into your branding. And maybe think about, is there a memory there that evokes particular colors or smells or tastes or emotions with those memories or traditions or aspects of your lineage, your ancestry, your family, your own life? And that could help inspire what the visuals are in your branding or your brand writing voice or how your tone is when you speak to clients and whatnot. And so, for example, for me, some things that have popped up in my branding include, this connection to food or photography of and events around Kamayan, which is um, a food experience, a dining experience where you use your hands and you're eating food that is laid out on a banana leaf. And that evokes this sense of intimacy, this sharing, this community, this conversation, warmth. Or if I think about pre-colonization, ancestral spirituality in the Philippines, they practice animism. And so to me, that comes to mind nature and earth tones, um, fruits and vegetables, the landscape like the volcanoes in my mom's province. And so thinking about what are just like a couple things that you can note down and then just like dive deeper into. So, for example, maybe there's a dish that you really loved. What about it, evokes emotions in you? And what are those emotions? What are the colors of that dish? Maybe that could be inspiration for your branding. And just dive into it like this black hole of research and get really curious about it and see where the different branches or threads guide you into this internal research.
This is making me want to start opening up my photo album to go down that
Yeah.
memory lane to look at all my childhood photos and dive into all the past and getting, little signs from my
Mhm.
childhood. Yeah, no, this is really, really, um, this is very meaningful. I think
Mhm.
I really feel like, for me personally at least, that connecting back to my roots and my Taiwanese culture and incorporating that into my business and what I do is so important. It's almost like that piece helps to ground everything, it anchors everything instead of
Mm.
seeing what I do, everything on the surface level.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited for you to go into your family photos.
Yes. So thank you so much, Isabel, for this amazing interview today. I think I learned a lot just by talking to you and from this show today. Is there anything new going on in your world that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me. It was truly so fun to chat with you. Once again, for those who are listening, I'm Isabel Bagsik. I'm the founder of Unconventional Bliss and really love supporting folks with design and creative direction and wellness. And so, something that I'm really excited about is my brand legacy retreat, which I just shared and updated my website. And I'm so excited to invite folks into that experience where we really dive into the practices that I shared today and the processes in this sacred space where it's this blending of intuitive practices and branding rituals, letting that be the foundation first, and then diving into the strategy of planning out these different campaigns and the way that your branding will evolve and grow in a way that feels so good and true to you. And so I'm really excited to invite folks into that brand legacy retreat. And if you're curious about that, feel free to chat with me and DM me on Instagram. So excited.
Thank you, Isabel. Is there any last words that you want to leave the people with before we finish?
Yeah. So for those who are listening, I'd love to invite you into this deep inquiry with yourself of what is the thing that you're scared of sharing and why? And can you invite yourself to do that thing? Whether, no matter how long it takes, can you even dip your toe into trying that out and continuing to meet your edges? Because we're not meant to restrict ourselves. We're not meant to hide our voices and be hidden away. We want to hear from you. We want to see you. We want to know what's on your heart. And so, what is edgy for you? And what are you scared of? And if you are scared, listing out maybe for yourself what could be the worst thing that could happen and getting comfortable with that and if there, if you did write out that list, if that those things were to happen, would you be okay?
Mm.
And oftentimes you'll still be alive, you'll still be fine. And so sometimes we need to see it on paper, see it for ourselves, and be like, no, I think I can write that post. I can go on Instagram stories. I can write that edgy blog post and say what I truly feel or ask for that raise, whatever that is, getting your body to feel safe with those edges and encouraging to meet those edges in a courageous way.
Mm. Thank you so much, Isabel, for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much.